I wonder about if we can like zero in a little bit more on like the
Mm,
audition process, because
okay.
I know a lot of people go on auditions and it's very intimidating to a lot of people, especially if you're just starting out. Let's say your agent calls you, you get a script. What's the first thing you do? You read it? Do you come at it from character, from plot? What's the first thing you do?
So I've kind of adapted back to this idea a little bit of like the unreserved, sort of unapologetic nature of it all. So Lewis, the who founded the studio that I teach at, one of the things he's always referred to audition scripts as the first time you pick them up, it's sort of like untouched snow, right? Um, and so there's a couple different ways, depending on the nature of the project. There's a couple of different ways that I'll mentally sort of prepare. But the first thing that I usually do right out of the gate is I just read the sides, like the script, right? I don't even really take a look at character description or project breakdown, really much of that information at that point, because I want to be able to experience this scene for the first time for real for myself, right? Read it over a couple of times, kind of play with it a little bit, jot down some thoughts I have, jot down some gut reactions I have to things, and then sort of build out from there. Then as I get a little bit more comfortable with it, I start to mess about with information gathering, things that my character would know going into the scene, right? Even if I have a big confession in page three, right? From page one, that confession is going to be on my mind in some way, shape, or form,
Right.
right? Because that's how people work, right? I'm not coming into a conversation, a difficult conversation with a loved one, completely, I don't know what's going to happen, right? I'm coming in being like, I know I have to talk about this. This makes me feel this way, kind of building out from there. And then once I start to get that much more comfortable with kind of these ideas and the script and this information that I have, then, obviously the job is to actually tailor it a little bit to the project. So then I bring in, the info from the character breakdown and the script breakdown and stuff like the character description, excuse me, and the script breakdown to just sort of supplement that info. And funnily enough, one of the last things that I ever actually pay serious attention to is the quote unquote memorization.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because I have found and this is very much anecdotal, of course, as most things are with acting, right? 98% of acting exists in the gray area, I would say. Um, but I find the term itself doesn't help a ton other than just stress people out. Um, but it also puts this pressure or this weight on our lines. And like, look, the script is very important. You have to know your lines. That is the job. But when we focus so much of our energy just on the memorization, so much of the story gets lost. So much of the detail in stage direction, the detail in what's even said to you. Right? I'll have conversations with actors about scripts and they've come in and I'll ask them a question about their script. A question that can be answered probably by one of their lines or one of my lines. And they don't know what the answer is because the memorization has just become, if I just drill these words into my head, I can go into the room and regurgitate them back. Job done.
All right. So the memorization becomes a focal point and takes away from the story and the emotion
And the understanding,
and the understanding.
right? And the funny bit too, I find in this way and in this opportunity to play with, the story and the emotional elements and the understanding of it, then when I do actually sit down and be like, wait, do I know my lines? I already do.
Right, because you didn't it's not like a rote memory in the sense of like, oh, I'm just regurgitating. It's more of like an emotional memory because you know the emotional core of the scene and you're like, well, I'm feeling this because this is what's happening. And so even if you don't necessarily get every syllable correct, it's like you have the sense of what it
What
is.
what's going on, right? Someone tells you a story. You didn't write the story down. You didn't read it over 10, 20, 30,000 times in an effort to regurgitate it back to someone else. you just listened to it, you understood it, you had thoughts and feelings and associations to it. Now 2 weeks goes by and something happens, reminds you of that story. Now you're the one telling the story, right? So it's that much more the human kind of element to it, right? The way that we intake information as people and then share that information. The funniest bits sometimes are when an actor gets stuck on a line and I don't give it to them. I say, I'm going to go back on my line, and all I want you to do is take a breath and say the first thing that comes to your mind. I would say I'm probably batting around 85, 90% of the time. They absolutely nail the line on the repeat.
What do you think that is? Is that letting go of the stress of that moment and having the
In
freedom to make a mistake?
in my opinion, yeah. Right. It's, again, very anecdotal, but it goes back to the like, even just our origin story, right? I watched a movie and I took it in and I enjoyed it and it made me feel a way. And then 2 weeks later, I'm still reciting the entirety of that movie back at my parents and I'm 11 years old, right? Because I don't have this thought in my head of like, memorize the lines, memorize the lines, memorize the lines.
Right. So do you think there is room for improvisation then?